Ambition for the future of the COG is to see the third sector being invested in heavily by government and local government, and to see it as surviving and thriving.
What we're doing together is making such a difference. This sector is essentially the future of support to residents and communities in crisis.
Good afternoon and welcome to Voluntary Action South Lanarkshire's podcast channel. My name is Wendy Johnston and I'm VASLan's development lead. In my role, I help to support the work of the local third sector chief officers group, and today I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Brendan Rooney, the outgoing chair of the chief officers group, or COG for short. Brendan has 44 years of experience, both volunteering and working in the community and voluntary sector, and today we have the opportunity to hear directly from this experienced community activist and development leader. Brendan's going to tell us about his experiencing, learning and hopes for the future, both for the sector and for himself. Brendan, welcome.
Thank you, Wendy.
Would you like to just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and the roles that you currently fulfil?
Yeah, I retire in 9 weeks' time, actually, and I'm currently the Executive Director for Healthy and Happy Community Development Trust, which is just a great organisation full of great people doing great work in Rutherglen and Camglen in South Lanarkshire. Up until just a week or so ago, I was the chairperson of the COG, the South Lanarkshire Third Sector Chief Officers Group, and it's been an absolute pleasure throughout the 10 years. I think probably work-wise, that's the main roles.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So tell us just a little bit more about Healthy and Happy. What does the organisation do? And
so many things, but ultimately what we are focused on, our community-led health and wellbeing organisation. Ultimately we save lives, improve lives and improve where we live, and so many things, but we've got around about 120 local volunteers, local residents involved.
Wow.
Pre-pandemic it was about 300 volunteers. That's slightly changed, and we do so many things, but it's full of local people doing great work.
can you give a flavour as the kind of activities that people can get involved in?
Yeah, the whole podcast could be taken up by that. So we've got a community radio station. We have a local community venue. We do good old-fashioned community work. We work with all age groups with such a lot of different activities going on. We do suicide prevention work, mental health improvement work. We work with prenatal, postnatal babies, mums and dads, grandparents, and everyone else, and so much more.
That's amazing. So, place-based community development centre, hub that responds to the needs of the local community, and there's hooks, there's activities to get people in that are kind of light touch for all ages, and then there's more deeper work as and when people require it.
Very much so. Very much so. And we try our best to generate as much income for local communities. I think we've raised about 2.8 million over the last 8 years. No, that hasn't come to Healthy and Happy.
Yeah.
That's gone into local community groups and local communities themselves. We're very proud of that.
Brilliant. So it's not just about the work of the organisation, but it's about that the connections and spread and capacity building that you can bring to the wider area as well.
Very much so.
Which is brilliant, actually, because that leads us to the COG.
Yeah.
I know about it because I help support the COG, but can you tell us what the COG is and what the kind of aims of the COG are? Why does it exist?
Yeah, it's quite a unique group, actually, in many ways. And we came together just over 10 years ago, and perhaps later we can talk about the circumstances, when we came together and why we came together. But you've got a group of around 35 or so, could be, regardless of title, be it chief executive, executive director, chief officer, and so on. The generic term is chief officers group of community and voluntary and social enterprise organisations across South Lanarkshire. South Lanarkshire split into 4 localities for planning purposes. So organisations from various communities of interest across South Lanarkshire. But you've got a group of people who are really passionate, really skilled, really experienced, very committed, and they've got such a lot of individual, but even more so combined talent and knowledge. They've been willing to come together to make a difference for the sector, for communities and communities of interest, and for their organisations as well. So it's it's a very talented group that's made quite an impact, actually.
That's great. Thank you. And from a sort of capacity support side of things, I see what the members bring to the group and what they get from it. So the friendship, the mutual support, there's mentoring there for emerging leaders and from experienced ones. There's a lot of partnerships flourish. And now we've also been moving into more formal consortia working. So a bit of income generation across the sector as well. But there's a lot of strategic representation, isn't there? Working with our partners in other sectors, the statutory sector, community planning partnerships as well.
No, there is, and it's been all of that, actually. So we've looked inward and we've looked outward, and there's real rationale behind that, and perhaps we'll maybe unearth that a little bit more, but absolutely all of that, actually. And I would say the third sector, or which I prefer to call the community, voluntary and social enterprise sector in truth, but that homogenous third sector term, I've never been entirely comfortable with it. But the third sector in South Lanarkshire is thriving, actually, and it's doing a really good job, and the Chief Officers Group has played its contribution, and I think that's been a significant contribution.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really exciting. I'm going to take us back 44 years, I think it is.
The mists of time.
So can you tell us how you kind of, I was going to say fell into this sector, but how did it come about that you found yourself working in the community and voluntary sector?
Yeah.
Tell us the story.
Yeah, there is a story there, actually. So I'm the youngest of 7 children. Dad worked by day, Mum worked at night. And my dad used to go out volunteering at night time. A couple of different things that he did. So when I was 16, I just kind of thought that's what you did when you were an adult. So that's what I did. And I said to my dad, is it okay if I come with you? He said, yeah, of course it is. And I went along. Went to visit a really nice man who lived less than a mile from where I lived and where I grew up. And I was shocked to my core when I went in. He essentially had virtually nothing. He had a roof over his head. His carpet was a Daily Record newspaper. He had one seat, one small table and a black and white portable. He offered us a cup of tea, but then had to say, sorry, son, I've only got 2 cups. And that was fine. And my dad and I sat, and I'll never forget the image, ever forget the image. We sat in a wooden crate, which was stamped South Africa. And we sat and, my dad, I listened and observed, really. And I came out and my dad said, you okay, son? I said, no, I'm not. That's not right. That's just not right. And I remember thinking, really, to my soul, that's not right. And I think it was my epiphany moment. And I remember thinking at 16, broadly clueless, but, passionate, I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to change the world so people are not living in those types of conditions. I guess I went away for 5 years, socialising, partying, living down south, dancing, and I actually had a great time, if I'm being honest. Paid no attention to study whatsoever during that time. And I decided when I was 21, I should say, I'll come back when I was 21. I continued volunteering through those 5 years, working with older people, youth groups, a voluntary working service for people. It was called the blind at that point, but people who were visually impaired. I loved that, actually. I really liked that. And various other things. So I volunteered throughout, and I've continued to volunteer throughout my adult life ever since. And I've loved that, and I still do. And when I was 21, I decided to go down the social work road or the mental health nursing road. There was already 2 nurses in the family, two brothers, actually. And I embarked on my mental health nursing journey. Loved it. And qualified after 3 years training. Worked in an adult acute admission ward with 35 male patients, 35 bedded ward, which is highly unusual now. Loved it. And 2 things happened though. One, I felt myself becoming institutionalised, and I didn't like it. I was starting to repeat behaviours or do behaviours. I thought, I don't like this. And 2, community care was about to be introduced. And I thought, you know what? Actually, I think I'm going to jump. And I applied, was successful, and I became a manager for the first time. And nursing didn't prepare me to be a manager. and I became a manager in the voluntary sector. It was a complete sink or swim experience. December 1991, complete sink or swim experience. Loved it, and I've been swimming ever since. So I guess I've continued to volunteer, which I hadn't realised then was broadly under the third sector's umbrella, at least the coordination of it. And it shaped me massively, my volunteering, different volunteering. So yeah, it shaped me really quite a lot, my volunteering throughout, and the various different roles I've played, all which have been broadly managerial leadership roles, in national voluntary organisations down to local organisations, and 23 years in my role at Healthy and Happy.
Wow, 23.
Yeah, which I've loved actually.
Amazing. I'm really interested as to what's kind of the key. I don't know if highlights is the word, but you told us a very powerful story about how things started. Do you have any particular moments, highlights, epiphanies that kind of come to you, whether it was particular roles you had or particular people you supported, differences that you saw the work making, something that comes to you just like that? I'll throw it open.
Yeah, no, there's so many. There is so many. I think there's a couple, certainly people stick out in my memory, those that I've worked alongside, and those that we've worked to support, and I've always loved more than anything else when a local resident, whatever age, says, "Son, thanks very much, don't need you anymore."
Yeah,
that was always the pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I always loved hearing when you brought people together who felt isolated and alone, and almost that they might be the only people experiencing what they were experiencing, and then when you introduce them to others who were experiencing the same challenges in life, the same health challenges, to hear them say, "Oh, do you suffer for that and all?" And I could walk away and let them talk, and therefore I guess creating a sort of peer support context. I remember that. I'll tell you which is an amusing one for me, and then I'll get it. There's so much to say. I'll bring it to the Chief Officers Group as a final point. I had been involved with, we established in 2007 what was called the Scottish Healthy Living Centre Alliance, and it was 26 organisations who were doing similar work to Healthy and Happy. I became the chairperson again for 10 years, and it's now called Scottish Communities for Health and Wellbeing. But we had written to Nicola Sturgeon, who at that point was the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Wellbeing, and we said, we're really concerned. These 26 organisations are at risk, and that means communities are at risk. I have to say, she was very receptive. It was a very interesting process. Two amusing points, I think, that stick out in my memory. In preparation for meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, quite where it came from I don't know, but we introduced an imaginary buzzer, and I got my son, who was 7 at that point, to draw it for me, which was like a big red button, and we put it on the table. Every time we were preparing to talk to Nicola Sturgeon, as soon as MD started to get negative, it's just not fair, that type of conversation, they get buzzed, and they had to stop and reframe and put it into solutions. And it was really effective, actually. Quite where it came from, I don't know, but it was also quite amusing. At times, highly frustrating, I have to say. and it caused some...
Because you couldn't have a moan.
Because all right, okay, beep, and you had to stop, and you had to reframe, rethink, and that was really interesting. But I remember staying in I decided I couldn't be bothered travelling through to Edinburgh for the morning. It was quite an early, I think it was something 9 o'clock or something like that. And I thought, I'm going to stay in a hotel. So I did. It was kind of outside Edinburgh. And I did something I'd never done before. And I thought, I could go and get my porridge. And I did. And she said to me, would you like whiskey in your porridge, sir? I said, you know what? Actually, yes, I would. And I got myself a lovely porridge with some whiskey and cream in it, and I felt quite the toff actually. And I thought, I'm just drinking whiskey before I'm going to meet the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Wellbeing. I remember like chuckling to myself on the way up to the on the bus on the way up to the park and ride area, and so on. But hey, we managed to persuade her and convince her, and got £5 million over 2 years, which thankfully saved all the 26 organisations.
That's amazing story.
Yeah.
I was going to say something really profound about about kind of community development practice principles, and you know, the power of peer, the power of empowerment. Peer, you've mentioned peer there, you mentioned empowerment, you mentioned positivity, and I was thinking, you know, we're a strong values-led sector. The approaches of true community development are really important about its sharing of power, and it's enabling people, and then it's stepping back and allowing them to take things forward. But then you went into lighthearted banter about whiskey. And I was like, but there's maybe something about politics there as well. It's ours is not always an easy sector to work in, is it? And my next question was kind of round about your reflections on the third sector, in inverted commas, or the community and voluntary social enterprise sector, challenges over the years, achievements over the years. Do you want to give us some of your thoughts around that?
Well, I guess I'll start at the present, and then I'll go back and bring us back to the present again. Seems to be a kind of logical thought process, if not way to go. My sense about the third sector in South Lanarkshire and in Scotland and the UK is that those of us who are immersed in the sector and who work in the sector, who are passionate about the sector, we are convinced about the value of what we do and how we do it. But have we convinced others? I think we've convinced some, and we talked about politics and politicians, and we've heard so many plaudits from politicians and from political parties across all, so no particular politician or political party I'm referring to, them all. Plaudits don't keep the lights on. Plaudits don't keep services going. Plaudits don't keep jobs for staff. Plaudits don't increase terms and conditions and pay in line with the cost of living and so on, or inflation, etc. Promises, they don't do it either. So they tell us they don't need to be convinced about what we do, but they seem to need to be convinced to invest, and to invest reasonably and properly. So we're passionate, excited and convinced about what we do and the impact of what we do. There are colleagues in the strategy sector who are absolutely convinced and who work alongside us, and they've got their own challenges and so on. I'll come back to where I think the third sector actually is now in Scotland and where it could and should be. So remind me, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to, I guess I started working, December 1991. And perhaps it's interesting that that's the time when the UK government introduced competition into the third sector from the sort of early 1990s. And they consciously and deliberately introduced competition into the third sector. And I'm sure they were convinced that that was the right thing to do, looking back. Then let's get into the noughties. Then they introduced commissioning and procurement. So they doubled down on competition for our sector. And of course, they were convinced that was the right thing to do. So let's take a sidestep and look at commissioning. The true purpose and reason and rationale for commissioning, that communities of interest, patients, public, would get closer to decision making and service design. That, of course, has been financial pressures and political changes and all sorts. And this is governments of all shapes, actually, in the UK, who've purported and continued this process. Then we'll go to whenever the Scottish Government introduced third sector interfaces. And it's a design and a rationale I've never agreed with, because it wasn't done for the interests of the community, voluntary, social enterprise, third sector. It was done for the interest of the Scottish Government, so that they could, plan, invest the resources in an easier way. But actually, did it actually take communities? Did it take communities of interest, put them at the sector, at the centre of the decision making? No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Some third sector interfaces have done exceptionally well. VASLan in South Lanarkshire is performing exceptionally well. I'm delighted to say. It's been a journey for all of them. Then you've got statutory agencies, all of whom have their own pressures, but there have been historically, certainly in the 90s, certainly in the noughties, times when some of the representatives haven't behaved entirely properly, have sought to do a bit of control, a bit of divide and conquer actually. There are others who have been excellent and who have been stalwarts and great supporters, and at all levels, senior, operational, middle management. But they're all pressures in relation to the sector. Then, of course, we've got the behaviour of the financial institutions. And I will delve into a political point, but not any party political point. All of this has been in the timescales in the 80s, the 90s, to date, where we've seen the rise of selfish neoliberal capitalism, which has been focused on individualism. We now have a significant rise in billionaires, in ultra wealthy people who are damaging society, damaging our planet. The statutory sector, public agencies, our sector, commercial sector, are all trying our best to mitigate against such behaviours and such mindsets. So all of that plays into pressures on our sector, because ultimately most third sector organisations, certainly local ones, are genuinely community-led or community of interest-led. They put their residents, their communities, their users, if that's the right terminology, at the centre of what they design and what they do. So there's a whole, myriad of national, international, social factors that are affecting our sector. And let's be honest, our society right now internationally, and in the UK and in Scotland, the levels of poverty are just absolutely unacceptable. The levels of hopelessness are absolutely unacceptable. And that brings me back to the point when I mentioned about our sector. Our sector now is in a position where it has been muted in various policy documents. If we go back to the Christie report in 2011, all of which we agreed with, that our sector was in fact the solution, the answer to a far more affordable, a far more cost effective and a far more impactful approach to local solutions to societal and community issues. Now, I think public services, sadly, have been eroded so badly, the pressure on them is so immense, that actually our sector is the one that's ready to deliver. But equally, of course, trying to get funding is exceptionally difficult. Core funding, I would argue, is investment, and we're asking governments and community planning partners and statutory agencies to invest in the local third sector organisations, both geographic and community of interest based. We can get funding. We're good at funding, but we need stability.
Yeah.
We need. If we were a ship, we're running out of oil for the engine. And we need that, and that's
or wind for the sails if we're moving into renewable energy.
Indeed. Yeah. So that's the investment we need. It needs to be steady. It needs to be continued, and so on. And it's far more affordable than large agencies. So I think our sector is now at the point where it's needed more than it has ever been. It's threatened more than it's ever been. But it's ready to deliver, and that will bring me, whenever you ask me, to the Chief Officers Group in South Lanarkshire.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and thank you for taking us sort of wide and looking to that eagle's eye view. Just to kind of wee point on that, or a wee reflection? If I was bringing out the red button to sort of put have you seen in the last year or two, locally, nationally, positive movements in terms of better recognition of the sector, better valuing of the sector, perhaps looking and committing to more fairer funding models as were kind of championed in the Keep the Beat Alive campaign?
Yes, but pleased to say yes is the answer to that, actually. I mean, I was mindful of the red button, but I was actually only kind of stating historical facts rather than any particular viewpoint on it. At least I attempted to do that. In terms of where we are now in South Lanarkshire, actually, so let's go back to the beginning of the Chief Officers Group and the conditions there and bring it up to date again, actually, because I think that's relevant to your question.
Yeah.
So we got together in 2016, and there was lots of those factors that I cited earlier and forces that were affecting our sector. And I used to meet the various chief officers occasionally at events or conferences and stuff like that. And it was great to see them. How you getting on? But remember, competition was rife at that point, and it was causing division because there was misunderstandings. We weren't supporting each other. We weren't sharing openly. We didn't have values at the centre of it, and that's how we started when we came together. And it was one particular conference, which shall remain nameless, in Hamilton, where many of us were. And I remember saying to a few of them, "This isn't good." And actually, it's not the responsibility of the government or the council or the NHS to put our sector's house in order. It's our responsibility. Are we actually going to get together and do something about it? And a few people were saying, yeah, I actually agreed. And we came together and we thought, well, how are we going to do that? How are we going to put our sector's house in order? And we talked and we got more people involved. And we said, actually, the sum of the whole is greater than the parts. And here's people who have been in the sector for a long time. There's such a lot of combined knowledge, experience, skill, talent and passion. So that's what we started to do. But we very quickly said, let's make this values-led. Let's establish our values and stick to them. And we did. And that glue, the values, is what held us together, actually, because it was really challenging. But what we said to ourselves, what we said to statutory agencies, senior officials from NHS, from the Health and Social Care Partnership, from South Lanarkshire Council, to local politicians and national politicians, MSPs, etc., that we are organising ourselves in our sector so that we could help them overcome the challenges that they're experiencing, and that we would be putting our sector's house in order so that we could start to deliver at scale and really help them to overcome, and everyone else, the sort of societal problems and challenges that we were facing. So that's what we set out to do, actually. And it's a fundamental question in all of this for me, which has remained throughout this journey. Does this sector want to be led, or does it want to lead? And there's only one answer. Of course we want to lead, and we can lead, and we should lead. And now we're in a position, to go back to your question, where we've had an excellent response from South Lanarkshire Council in the past couple of years. We have a partnership agreement. We've got a new grant agreement that's coming into force. We're talking to NHS Lanarkshire about that, Health and Social Care Partnership. And that's been a really excellent piece of work, and credit to the council for responding so positively to that. And we're hoping and encourage that NHS Lanarkshire and the Health and Social Care Partnership will respond equally positively, and will encourage and push for them to do so, because it really matters. It actually really matters. And it means that we've got a level of collaboration, joint participation, influence. Actually, the sector actually influencing investment decisions, policy decisions early in the process, which we've been asking for a long time. we're now starting to get that, which is really, really helpful. Getting involved to design the solutions to the challenges and the problems that they're facing agencies and facing communities and so on as well. So there's such a lot that's going on, and perhaps maybe if time allows, we can talk about what we're doing internally to the sector around consortia, collaboration, and stuff that's going on there as well.
It's really interesting because we're very much on the same wavelength here today. Because I was just thinking about recent practical successes within the COG. There's been some internal call to participate in consortia, and we've had some investment from Scottish Southern Energy for a consortia which is exactly around about power shifts and engagement at a strategic level, into sharing of resources and knowledge and skills to strengthen the sector. Is there anything else you want to add about either kind of recent successes of the COG, or where you hope that the COG will be able to go to in the future?
Do you know the consortia development overall? There's been quite a number of different consortias, and that can be in response to either a contract that might be up, commissioned, or some grant funding that might be available, and of course a whole variety of different work areas and so on, and watching. So having been involved in with other colleagues to sort of put the mechanisms in place for that, and then watching organisations come, yeah, we could do that, yeah, we would like to do that, yeah, so would we, and enabling and allowing that to happen. It's been really good actually, and it's part of that helping us to deliver at scale. But then recently, the one you talked about, community power lines with SSE getting involved. So now we've got a position in South Lanarkshire, we've got contract and grant income opportunities, but we've also got funders like SSE, and we've been speaking to philanthropists and philanthropy kind of focused organisations. So all of a sudden, and there's a funders forum, national funders forum meeting regionally in South Lanarkshire, looking at investment into the area. So now we've got a situation where our sector has enabled, and it has been our sector that has enabled us, facilitated it, where we've got statutory agencies, we've got philanthropy, philanthropists and philanthropy organisations. We've got regional funders, national funders working together with the sector, and that's really pleasing to see. And the opportunities are starting to emerge, and they're significantly high actually, or they could be significantly high. So I would encourage anyone involved in the sector to reach out to VASLan and the Chief Officer Group and find out more and get involved. Absolutely. We absolutely want them to be involved. I would encourage any chief officers who haven't had the time because of various commitments, and I do understand those commitments, to get involved. There is a lot of value to them as an individual chief officer, as a leader, as a manager, but also to the organisation and the work that they do. So there's such a lot, and we've built the foundations for all of that. So for me, retiring and taking my life into sort of slightly quieter waters, I only say slightly, which perhaps maybe you might ask me about that, but certainly quieter waters. It's a particularly, it's a good point for me, to be proud of what everyone's done so far and contributed so far. Also myself, thoroughly enjoyed actually working alongside colleagues, because there has been peer support. See, through the pandemic, we used to meet monthly prior to the pandemic. We ended up meeting weekly. Wow. Because the level of support, the level of intel, was it weekly or fortnightly, but more frequently anyway, because we supported each other through a bit of a crazy, strange time.
Because all your teams were out on the ground, in communities, at the sharp end.
Totally. It was the most full-on working experience I've ever had, actually. And it was the same for my colleagues in the Chief Officers Group and across the sector, actually, and for others. But, our level of support, intel sharing, resource sharing, and so on. It was fabulous, actually, and again, been a big sort of foundation stone for where we are now, actually. So, I'm exiting stage left, but my colleagues are still there, and the foundations are well in place. The sum of the whole is greater than the parts. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly, we are making a difference, and I'm encouraging my colleagues to continue. And I shared last week, and perhaps again, if it's relevant, I'll share. Don't just listen. Just don't listen to me. There are others in history who've left their wisdom behind as well. So I'll share that at some point.
So yeah, as you hand over to as you exit stage left, as you said, and hand over to new and emerging leaders across South Lanarkshire, do you have any top tips for them?
Yeah, I do. I think they're almost quite basic, actually, in some ways, but they're really quite fundamental and perhaps a bit philosophical as well, actually. I've always asked for help in my role, in my various roles. As a manager, leader since 1991, I've always asked for help. It just seems like a natural thing to do. And actually, those that you ask are always willing to help you. And I've got a proverb that's always stuck with me: a friend's eye is a good mirror. And that's always guided me. I've always really liked that. And just leadership is lonely enough without our own mental constructs or egos adding to that. So ask for help, because it's always there. People are willing to help. Keep on learning. Learning's critical to leaders and adults, actually, for me. And as I go into my retirement, I'm going to continue learning. I'm going to learn to dance. I'm going to learn to do a whole range of things, actually, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Amazing.
But keep on learning. And again, I've always been a fan of quotes and using other people. I see them as other people's wisdom. So keep on learning. You're never too old. So Albert Einstein, well known, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And the purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. Sidney J. Harris said that. And that just makes such a lot of sense to me. And I think our sector is collaborating internally and externally. And it's challenging internally and externally. And often in life, as people, and we find we don't have a lot of time, or life gets in the road. How dare it? And quite often, we can be black and white about challenges and circumstances, and we tend to go for the either or scenario. I would encourage colleagues to think about the both and, rather than the either or. And that's sort of aiming to include rather than exclude. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Actually, it can be both, or it can be all three, somewhere in the middle, where the solution might lie. So aim for the both and try and avoid the either or.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. What about, you mentioned dancing there, and I'm really interested in what your plans are for yourself. What next? I'm not going to say retirement, because I'm not sure it conjures up an image of fluffy slippers and and I don't think that's going to happen. Tell us what's coming next.
I'm definitely not getting the slippers on and a pipe out. Definitely not. Do you know what? Lots of things, actually. Lots of things which I'm really looking forward to. I am going to learn to dance, and I've been wanting to learn to dance for years, actually, but just quite didn't have the time, family life and work life and so on, and perhaps just in myself, actually. And so I want to create space for me, actually, and I'm really looking forward to that. And dance for me is something I've wanted to do and learn anyway. I used to watch my mum and dad dance, and they could glide round the floor, or they could jive, and I always thought that's really cool, that, actually. So they inspired me, I think.
Amazing.
So I'm going to go and do that, and I probably will start with jive. But I'd love to do swing dancing, actually. I've seen that professionally, and it's just fabulous. I thought if I get anywhere near that, I'd be really happy. I'm going to go back to Tai Chi. I'm looking forward to that.
Great.
this year in August I'm going to do a full triathlon. I've got a birthday this year, which some people think is a big birthday. I don't personally, but there you go. So I'm 60 next month. So I'm going to do a triathlon.
Happy early birthday.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a challenge, and I like a challenge.
I've noticed.
Yeah, and I'm going to get involved. I'm going to volunteer. I particularly want to volunteer in the mental health field. I've always wanted to be a mental health advocate and help people have a voice. When they're not getting listened to. I'd love to do that. But before I do that, I'm going to remain involved with the National Suicide Prevention Advisory Group for Scotland. And help Healthy and Happy set up a suicide cafe in Rutherglen and camglen.
Oh, that sounds like really, really important work. And I've just been reflecting there as you've been speaking about your volunteering. You've been working for 44 years in the voluntary sector, but you've actually done 88 years of work because you've always been volunteering as well. I'm going to start moving us towards conclusion, but I just want to open things up for you just to say, is there anything else that you want to tell us?
Keep the faith, everyone, because what you're doing, the work that you're doing is actually making a difference. I was reflecting on this just recently, actually. I said earlier on, the 16-year-old me wanted to change the world. Well, I guess the 60-year-old me has realised a bit more realistic. I still want to change the world, but I'm a bit more realistic. But what I hadn't realised until recently, so the work that my colleagues have done and my colleagues in this sector in South Lanarkshire in Scotland actually have made an impact in so many people's worlds or lives and worlds. So the work that we're doing actually does change lives, or most times for the better. Well, it is for the better actually, and certainly the intention is for the better. So actually our work can and does change lives, change people's worlds and so on, because they could just do things differently or do things they've never done before and so on. So watching that happening, I think, so I guess I would encourage folks to, keep the faith. It's tough at times, it is, but the more we come together, the stronger we will be. So keep the faith. And I'm going to quote another quote for you, probably the final one. It's often attributed to a lady called Margaret Mead. And, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Well, if I think about our sector, we are working with so many small groups of thoughtful, committed citizens. And that, for me, is the solution to international world and societal problems. If we can mobilise, motivate and encourage those groups of thoughtful citizens, we can have a ground-up, bottom-up, community-up solutions to societal problems.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us, Brendan. It's been a real pleasure both talking with you today and listening to you today and working with you over the last year and a half. We want to thank you for everything you've done for the communities you've served over the years and wish you all the very best for the next phase of your life. And to listeners, if you have enjoyed today's podcast, you can head over to VASLan's YouTube page where you'll find a range of podcasts and videos showcasing the work of the local community and voluntary sector from across South Lanarkshire. Thank you.
Ambition for the future of the COG is to see the third sector being invested in heavily by government and local government and to see it as surviving and thriving.
What we're doing together is making such a difference. This sector is essentially the future of support to residents and communities in crisis.